Welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving deep into something fundamental, something that genuinely underpins how organizations stay safe online. We're talking about managing security operations.
Exactly. It's a huge topic.
We'll be pulling out the key insights from CISSP Chapter 16, which is, a real cornerstone text in the cybersecurity field. Our aim is to give you practical, actionable stuff you can actually use.
That's the plan. Because, security operations isn't just about putting up a firewall and calling it a day.
Yeah.
It's the ongoing day in, day out work,
The constant vigilance part.
right? The practices that keep an organization resilient against threats that are, frankly, always changing. Think of it as the how-to guide for continuous cybersecurity. So our mission today, extract those nuggets of knowledge, understand the why behind these operations, and maybe touch on some of the real-world challenges too.
Okay, let's get started. The core purpose, you said, is safeguarding assets. But it feels like there's more to it than just locks and keys. These terms due care and due diligence keep coming up. What do they actually mean in practice?
Yeah, great place to start. The absolute primary goal of IT security operations is safeguarding those assets. And assets is broad. It's information, systems, devices, even the buildings they're in. It's all about identifying threats, spotting vulnerabilities, and putting the right controls in place. Now, due care. Think of this as, well, acting reasonably. It's the level of care any sensible person or company would take in a similar situation. Common sense steps.
Like locking your front door.
Exactly. Or say you run a shop. Due care is having basic locks, maybe an alarm. It's the generally accepted stuff you do to protect things. Acting responsibly now based on what's considered normal and appropriate.
Okay, that sounds straightforward. What about due diligence then? Sounds similar.
It sounds similar, but it's different. Due diligence is more investigative. It's the homework you do before you act. It's about proactively understanding the risks.
So sticking with the shop analogy.
Right. Due diligence for the shop owner would be researching the best types of locks, maybe looking into advanced alarm systems, checking local crime stats, even talking to security experts before they install anything. They're digging deeper to really understand the threats and figure out the best specific protections.
Ah, I see. Due care is the standard action. Due diligence is the research to set that standard for your situation.
Precisely. And here's the kicker. Senior management has a direct responsibility off the legal one to exercise both. If something goes wrong, showing they perform due care and due diligence can significantly reduce their liability. It's not just good practice. It's often legally necessary.
Makes perfect sense. So taking these broad principles down to the operational level,
Yeah.
how do they guide who gets access to what within a company? Concepts like need to know and least privilege.
Okay, yeah. These are fundamental for controlling access day to day. They operationalize those higher-level principles. And while they sound alike, they tackle different parts of the access puzzle. Let's start with need-to-know access. This one's pretty much what it sounds like. You only get access to the specific data or resources you absolutely need to do your assigned job. Nothing more. The main goal here is confidentiality.
So if I'm in marketing, I probably don't need access to the raw engineering schematics.
Exactly. Or think about security clearances, like top secret. Having the clearance doesn't mean you see everything classified as top secret. You only see the specific top secret info that relates directly to your mission or project. Your need to know. A database administrator, for instance, they might need high-level access to manage the database server itself, backups, performance tuning, that sort of thing.
Right.
But they don't necessarily need to see the sensitive financial data inside the database tables unless their specific task requires it. Need to know restricts access to the information itself.
Okay, so need to know is about what information? How is principle of least privilege different then?
Good question. Least privilege focuses on what you can do with the resources you do have access to. It dictates that any subject, a user, an application, even a system process, gets only the bare minimum permissions needed to perform its task.
Permissions like?
Like read, write, create, delete, execute. Just specific actions required and absolutely no more. Think of a chef in a kitchen.
Okay.
When they're just chopping vegetables, least privilege means they get a knife and a cutting board, not the keys to the walk-in freezer or the master controls for the oven. Giving them everything increases the chance of mistakes or misuse.
So, in IT.
It means maybe a data entry clerk can add new records but can't delete existing ones.
Yeah.
Or a standard user can run approved applications on their laptop but doesn't have administrator rights to install new software or change critical system settings. This protects confidentiality, sure, but it's especially huge for protecting data integrity and system stability.
And I guess it limits the damage if an account gets compromised.
Massively. If an attacker compromises an account that only has minimal privileges, the blast radius is much smaller. They can't easily escalate privileges or move laterally across the network. It's a cornerstone of defense in depth.
Right, limiting the power of one person. That sounds like it leads naturally into segregation of duties, or SOD. How does that work?
Exactly. Segregation of duties, often called SOD, is a really critical organizational control. The whole point is to make sure no single person has complete control over a sensitive or critical process from start to finish.
Why is that so important?
It prevents one individual from being able to commit fraud or cause significant damage, either accidentally or maliciously, without anyone else noticing. By splitting up the tasks, you build in checks and balances. The classic example is in accounting. You might have one person who can approve invoices, a different person who can authorize payments, and yet another person who reconciles the bank statements.
Ah, so one person can't just create a fake invoice and pay it to themselves without someone else spotting it.
Precisely. It forces collusion. To commit fraud, at least two people would have to conspire, which makes it much harder and riskier. So FODI is enforced by carefully dividing up those administrative or sensitive tasks.
Are there like stricter versions of this for really sensitive things?
Oh, definitely. Two important ones are two-person control and split knowledge. Two-person control is sometimes called a two-man rule. It literally requires two authorized individuals to be present and concur before a critical action can be taken. Think of launching a missile. You always see two people turning keys simultaneously in the movies.
Or like a bank vault needing two keys?
Perfect analogy. A safe deposit box often needs the customer's key and the bank employee's key. Neither can open it alone. This forces peer review and makes solo malicious actions impossible for those specific tasks, maybe handling cryptographic keys or authorizing huge financial transfers.
Okay, and split knowledge, how's that different?
Split knowledge builds on SOD by dividing the actual information or privilege needed to do something. No single person knows or possesses enough to compromise the system on their own.
Like tearing a password in half.
Kind of, yeah. Or imagine a complex cryptographic key split into three parts, with each part held by a different senior administrator. You need all three parts brought together to decrypt something critical or access a super privileged account. Even if one person's credentials or knowledge is compromised, the system remains secure without the other pieces. You see this in some advanced privileged account management systems, or PAM systems.
Wow, okay, so separating actions, sometimes separating the knowledge itself. Very clever. What about less technical things like people moving between jobs or even just taking holidays? Can that actually help security?
Believe it or not, yes. Simple personnel practices can be surprisingly effective security controls, particularly against internal threats. Take job rotation.
Just moving people around different roles.
Yep. Employees periodically rotate through different jobs or areas of responsibility. This has several benefits. First, it's a security control. If someone is doing something dodgy, it's much more likely to be discovered when someone else takes over their desk and looks at their work with fresh eyes.
Ah, a kind of built-in audit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It acts as peer review and helps detect fraud. Plus, it's great for cross-training. The organization becomes less dependent on any one person, which improves resilience if someone leaves suddenly or is unavailable.
Makes sense. And mandatory holidays. Why force people to take time off?
Mandatory vacations, yeah. Many organizations, especially in finance, insist employees take, say, at least 1 or even 2 consecutive weeks of vacation per year. The main security reason. Again, it's a form of peer review designed to uncover fraud or collusion.
Because someone else has to do their job while they're away.
You got it. When someone's out for a week or two, their duties have to be covered. The person stepping in might notice irregularities or activities the absent employee was trying to hide. It's harder to keep a complex fraud going when someone else is looking over your shoulder, even temporarily. Combining SOD, job rotation, and mandatory vacations creates layers of defense against internal risks.
Those are really smart, almost low-tech controls focusing on the human element. Let's shift to something more technical now, but still about controlling access. Privileged account management, or PAM. What exactly are PAM solutions doing?
Right. PAM or PAM solutions are specialized tools and processes designed to tightly control, monitor, and secure those super powerful accounts. We're talking about your administrator accounts in Windows, the root account in Linux, database superusers, network device admin accounts, the keys to the kingdom.
Because if those get compromised,
Game over, potentially. They have immense power over systems and data. So PAM is critical. A key principle here is just-in-time administration.
Just in time, like only getting power when you need it.
Exactly that. Instead of admins having those powerful privileges all the time, 2040-47, they have to specifically request them for a particular task. The privileges are then granted, often automatically via an approved help desk ticket, but only for a limited time, maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour.
And then it expires.
Correct. Once the time's up, or the task is marked complete, the elevated privileges are automatically revoked. This is huge because it foils attacks that rely on stealing credentials or access tokens that remain valid for hours or days, like some types of Kerberos attacks. If an attacker steals a temporary 15-minute credential, its usefulness is severely limited.
Okay, that makes sense. Does PAM do more than just grant temporary access?
Oh, absolutely. A massive part of PAM is monitoring and logging everything done with those privileged accounts. Creating new users, changing firewall rules, modifying system configurations, accessing sensitive files, it all gets logged. This log data is typically fed into a security information and event management system. That's SIEM or SIEM for analysis. The goal is to ensure privileged users aren't abusing their power and to detect any signs of misuse or compromise fast.
And you mentioned this helps catch really advanced threats.
Yeah, it's particularly effective against advanced persistent threats, or APTs. These APTs, often nation-state sponsored, are sophisticated attackers aiming to stay hidden inside networks for months or years. There was even a joint alert, TAI 7239A, from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, detailing common tactics used by APTs.
What kind of things do they look for?
The alert highlighted red flags like attackers accessing or deleting logs to hide their tracks, creating new admin accounts for persistence, messing with network rules like opening up port 3389 for Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP, or disabling firewalls running malicious scripts like PowerShell or JavaScript, and scheduling suspicious tasks to run automatically. The point is, PAM, combined with good SIEM monitoring, provides the visibility needed to spot these subtle activities early. Without it, an APT could be dwelling in your network for ages, stealing data or causing damage completely undetected. It really shifts security from being reactive to deeply proactive.
That's a powerful capability. Now, moving beyond internal controls, companies rely heavily on outside vendors, especially in the cloud. How do you make sure they meet your security standards? Are there formal agreements for that?
Yes, definitely. For those external relationships, service level agreements, or SLAs, are absolutely essential. An SLA is a formal contract between your organization and the vendor.
What does it specify?
It spells out clear performance expectations, things like guaranteed uptime percentages for a cloud service, response times for support, specific security controls the vendor must maintain, and crucially, it outlines penalties, often financial, if the vendor fails to meet those expectations. For cloud services, SLAs are how you ensure availability and hold the provider accountable.
So it has teeth, basically.
It should, yes. There's also something called a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. An MOU is usually less formal than an SLA. It signals an intent to work together, outlines general responsibilities, but typically doesn't include those financial penalties. It's more like a handshake agreement, maybe a first step before a full SLA.
Okay, SLAs for the serious stuff. Got it.
Yeah.
Let's shift focus again. We've covered data, systems, vendors, but what about the people? The employees, the staff? How do security operations protect personnel safety and security? Because people aren't replaceable like servers.
You hit the nail on the head. People are the most valuable asset, and they are irreplaceable. Their safety must always come first. Think about an emergency exit door in a secure facility, maybe a data center. It might have an electronic lock for security.
Right.
But in a fire or a power outage, that lock must fail open. It has to allow people to get out safely, even if it compromises physical security temporarily. Protecting lives trumps protecting data or equipment always. Good security design reflects this. This priority also drives things like Duress systems. These are vital for people working alone or in high-risk roles, think security guards, remote site technicians, late-night workers.
How do they work? Is it just a panic button?
It can be more sophisticated. A Duress system might send a silent alarm to a monitoring center, but it can also try to initiate communication back to the person. Maybe send a text. Is everything okay? The person under duress could then respond with a pre-agreed code word or phrase, something innocuous like, the coffee machine is broken, to signal they're in trouble, without alerting an attacker standing right there.
Clever.
Some electronic door locks even support multiple PIN codes, one for normal entry and a special duress code that unlocks the door normally but also triggers a silent alarm.
Wow. Okay, what about when people are traveling? That seems like a vulnerable time.
Hugely vulnerable. Travel security is a major concern. Business travelers are often targeted because criminals assume they have valuable laptops, sensitive company data, or just aren't paying as much attention in an unfamiliar environment. Basic precautions are key. Always verify who's knocking on your hotel room door before opening it. Be suspicious of calls offering free room service upgrades. It might be a scam to see if you're in the room.
And devices, laptops, phones.
Prime targets, laptops, smartphones, tablets, they all need strong encryption, ideally full disk encryption. And physical control is paramount. Don't leave devices unattended, even for a minute. When traveling to certain foreign countries, there's a real risk of malware and monitoring devices. Devices might get infected with spyware or physical bugs could even be planted. Best practice. If possible, use temporary burner devices for high-risk travel. And any device used on such trips should be completely wiped and re-imaged upon return before connecting back to the corporate network.
What about connecting to the internet while traveling? Hotel Wi-Fi.
Big danger zone. Free Wi-Fi is incredibly risky. It's trivial for an attacker to set up a fake hotspot that looks legitimate like hotel guest Wi-Fi.
And then they intercept everything.
Exactly. It's called an on-path or man-in-the-middle attack. Your connection to websites might look secure, showing the HTTPS lock icon, but the attacker sits in the middle, decrypting your traffic, reading it, and then re-encrypting it to send it on. They see everything.
So what's the safe way?
The safest bet is to use your own internet connection, like your smartphone's hotspot. If you absolutely must use public Wi-Fi, or if you need to connect back to your company's internal network, always use a virtual private network, or VPN. A VPN creates a secure, encrypted tunnel for your traffic, protecting it even over untrusted networks. And of course, personnel safety includes emergency management planning, having clear procedures for natural disasters, fires, active shooter situations, or even major cyber attacks that affect physical safety. The focus is always on getting people to safety. Finally, underpinning all of this is security training and awareness. This isn't just about phishing emails anymore. Training needs to cover insider threats, recognizing warning signs. It needs to address the risks of social media, how personal information shared online can fuel social engineering attacks.
And you mentioned something about 2FA fatigue, two-factor authentication fatigue.
Yes, two-factor authentication, or 2FA, fatigue is a growing problem. Users get bombarded with 2FA prompts, especially push notifications on their phones, and they just start hitting approve without really checking. Or they get annoyed and try to find ways around it.
Which completely defeats the purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Attackers exploit this by sending rapid-fire fake prompts, hoping the user will just approve one to make them stop. Training has to constantly reinforce why 2FA is so important and the dangers of becoming complacent. It's a small inconvenience for a huge security benefit.
Okay, protecting the people is paramount. Let's broaden out again to provisioning information and assets securely. Provisioning sounds like just setting things up, but what does ownership mean here? Is it different for data versus, say, a laptop?
Good question. Provisioning is indeed about setting up and configuring systems securely from the start. And yes, information and asset ownership is a really key concept for accountability. We usually distinguish between the data owner and the data custodian. The data owner is typically a senior business leader, maybe a department head, VP, or even the CEO. They have the ultimate responsibility for that data. They decide its classification. Is it public, confidential, restricted? They understand its business value and dictate how it needs to be protected based on that value and any regulations.
So they own the responsibility for the data.
Correct. The data custodians, on the other hand, are usually the IT or security folks. They're responsible for the day-to-day technical protection of the data based on the owner's requirements. They implement the access controls, manage the backups, configure the storage, apply the security patches. They care for the data, but the owner is ultimately accountable for it.
That clarifies the roles. And assets aren't just data, right?
Right. We have tangible assets. Physical things you can touch. Servers, laptops, network gear, software licenses on paper. And then we have intangible assets, non-physical, but often incredibly valuable. Patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, the company's reputation, customer goodwill.
Those intangibles sound hard to manage.
They can be harder to put a dollar value on sometimes, but their loss can be devastating. Asset management is the whole process of managing all these assets, tangible and intangible, throughout their entire life, from the moment you acquire them until you securely dispose of them. Many organizations use a configuration management system, or CMS, to help automate this. A CMS can automatically discover assets on the network, check their configurations against policies, track software installations, and maintain a central inventory.
How do companies typically track the physical hardware, laptops, servers, etc.?
For hardware asset inventories, common methods include using simple barcode labels. You scan the barcode to track the serial number, model, location, assigned user, etc.
Pretty standard.
Yeah. Increasingly popular are radio frequency identification, or RFID tags. RFID tags can be scanned wirelessly, often from a distance, which makes inventory checks much faster, especially in large environments like data centers. You can just walk around with a scanner.
And when that hardware is retired, you can't just throw it out, right?
Absolutely not. Secure disposal is critical. Before any equipment leaves the building, all stored data must be sanitized completely and irretrievably destroyed. There are standards for this, like NIST 888 Revision 1, that's from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It gives detailed procedures for sanitizing hard drives, solid-state drives, USB drives, even CDs and DVDs. Failure to sanitize properly can lead to massive data breaches from discarded equipment.
Okay. What about software? How do you inventory that?
Software asset inventories focus on tracking operating systems, applications, and especially license keys and activations. This is vital for ensuring license compliance, avoiding legal trouble and fines, and also for security, to detect unauthorized or pirated software running on the network, which could contain malware. If you buy a license for 5 users and someone steals the key and installs it on 10 other machines, you have a problem. Asset management helps track that.
And those intangible assets, patents, copyrights.
Intangible inventories track those intellectual property assets. Even though it's hard to put an exact price tag on them sometimes, they need careful management. A patent might generate revenue for 20 years, but you usually have to pay annual maintenance fees. If you forget, you could lose the patent. Financial reporting standards like Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, or GAAP, actually require tracking these assets, showing their business importance.
It's a huge scope. Let's zoom in on protecting resources, specifically media, tapes, USB drives, etc. What does apply resource protection mean for media?
Yeah, apply resource protection is about the techniques used to secure things. And media management is a big part of that. Media is anything that holds data magnetic tapes, optical discs like CDs, DVDs, solid-state drives, USB flash drives, smartphones, memory cards, backup disks. It's a long list. Media protection techniques involve several things. Physically sensitive media should be stored in securely locked rooms, safes with controlled access. Environmental controls, like proper temperature and humidity, are important to prevent physical damage, especially for tapes. Technically, you might use controls to restrict which devices can be connected, maybe blocking all USB ports except for company-issued encrypted drives. USB drives are a huge risk, easy way to bring malware in, easy way to walk out with sensitive data.
So how do you control USBs effectively?
Many orgs control USB flash drives by only allowing specific, approved, secure brands. Some drives, like certain IronKey models, have built-in hardware encryption like AES 256-bit, require multi-factor authentication, and even have anti-malware capabilities. Admins can often manage these centrally reset passwords, audit usage, enforce policies remotely.
What about good old backup tapes? Still relevant.
Still very relevant for many, especially for long-term archives and disaster recovery due to cost and durability. Best practice for tape media is usually to keep at least 2 copies of critical backups, one readily available, maybe near site, and another stored securely off-site. Physical care is crucial for tapes. Clean storage, avoid strong magnetic fields, protect from extreme temperatures or humidity. Transport them securely, preferably in climate-controlled vehicles if going off-site. And critically, always encrypt backups, especially those leaving your physical control. If an encrypted tape gets lost or stolen, the data is still safe.
And mobile devices are media too, right?
Absolutely. Mobile devices, laptops, phones, tablets hold enormous amounts of data and need robust security policies covering encryption, remote wipe capabilities, and access controls. Finally, you have to manage the media lifecycle. All media degrades over time. Tapes might only be reliable for a certain number of reuses or years. You need to track this, monitor backup logs for errors. A key metric is mean time to failure, or MTTF. MTTF. It estimates the average lifespan of a non-repairable device, like a tape or an SSD. It's different from mean time between failures, or MTBF, which applies to things you can repair, like a server. When media approaches its MTTF, it needs to be retired and securely destroyed.
How do you destroy media securely?
For tapes, degaussing using a powerful magnet to erase the data followed by physical shredding is common. For solid-state drives or SSDs, degaussing doesn't really work because they don't store data magnetically.
Huh.
So for SSDs, you typically use cryptographic erase methods, secure erase commands built into the drive, or physical destruction like shredding or pulverizing. The goal is to make data recovery impossible.
Okay, that covers physical media pretty thoroughly. But so much is moving to the cloud now. How do these principles apply to managed services in the cloud? What changes?
The cloud definitely changes the game. You get amazing benefits like scalability and availability, but the big challenge is you have less direct control over the underlying infrastructure. Risk management becomes different. For sensitive environments, like government, there are specific guides like the Department of Defense or DoD. Cloud Computing Security Requirements guide the CCSRG, a non-negotiable rule for cloud. Encrypt sensitive data, always. Both data in transit, moving across networks, and data at rest, stored in the cloud. And crucially, you, the customer, should control the encryption keys, not the cloud provider. That keeps you in control. When deleting data, use cryptographic erasure, basically destroying the key so the encrypted data becomes useless. The amount of responsibility you have versus the cloud provider depends heavily on the cloud service model. Think of it like a stack.
Okay, what are the main models?
At the top, you have software as a service, or SaaS, pronounced SaaS, like webmail like Gmail or CRM like Salesforce. The vendor manages almost everything. The application, the platform, the infrastructure. You just use the software and manage your data within it. Easiest for you, but least control.
Right.
Then there's Platform as a Service, or PaaS, pronounced PaaS. Here, the vendor provides the platform, operating system, runtime environments, databases, middleware. You deploy and manage your own applications on top of that platform. You control your apps and data. They handle the underlying infrastructure. Good for developers.
And the lowest level?
That's Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS, pronounced IaaS. Here, the vendor provides the fundamental building blocks: virtual machines, storage, networking. You install and manage everything else: the operating system, middleware, applications, data. You have the most control, but also the most responsibility for security and maintenance. The vendor just handles the physical hardware and the virtualization layer. These models and the shared responsibilities are well defined in NIST standards like SP 800-145. You also have different cloud deployment models. Public cloud uses resources provided by a third-party cloud service provider, or CSP, available to anyone over the internet. Private cloud is infrastructure dedicated to a single organization, either on-premise or hosted by a third party. Community cloud is shared by several organizations with common needs. And hybrid cloud combines two or more types, like using a private cloud for sensitive data and a public cloud for web servers.
I've also heard the term ZES, anything as a service.
Yeah, anything as a service, or ZAS, pronounced ZAS, is just a catch-all term for the huge variety of services delivered via the cloud. It highlights the flexibility. One specific type is security as a service, or CISSP. This is where security functions like backup, authentication, anti-malware, even SAM, are delivered as cloud services, often by a managed service provider, MSP, or a specialized managed security service provider, MSSP.
Two other terms often mentioned with cloud are scalability and elasticity. Are they the same thing?
Close but distinct. Scalability is the ability to increase capacity to handle more load, usually by adding resources like more RAM, random access memory, or RAM or CPU cores to a server. It often involves manual changes, maybe even downtime. You scale up or down. Elasticity is more dynamic and automated. It's the system's ability to automatically add or remove resources in response to changing demand, often without downtime. Think of an online store during a flash sale.
Traffic spikes.
Exactly. An elastic system automatically provisions more server instances or resources to handle the spike, then automatically scales back down when the demand drops. It matches resources to the load in real time. This is a key benefit of virtualization and cloud platforms.
Okay, and how do organizations connect all these different pieces on-premise cloud services?
That's where services integration comes in. It uses technologies like cloud integration platforms, APIs, and sometimes integration platform as a service, or IPaaS, to connect different systems and applications, whether they're on-premise or in various clouds. The goal is to break down data silos, improve visibility, and make everything work together smoothly. A software-defined data center, or SDDC, is an example of achieving this kind of integration.
One last cloud concept, serverless architecture. Does that mean no servers are involved?
Not quite. There are definitely still servers. Serverless architecture means you, the developer, don't have to manage those servers. You write your code as small, independent functions, and the cloud provider automatically handles provisioning the infrastructure, scaling it, and running the code when it's triggered by an event. You only pay for the compute time your function actually uses. It's often called function as a service, or FAS. FAIS.
So similar to microservices, but you don't even manage the container or VM.
Pretty much. It's highly efficient for event-driven applications, but it's a different way of thinking about deployment compared to traditional PACE, or IaaS.
Wow. Okay, the cloud landscape is definitely complex with all those models and concepts. Let's bring it back to the ongoing management of infrastructure, whether it's cloud or on-premise. How do you ensure systems stay secure over time? Let's start with configuration management.
Right, configuration management, or CM, is absolutely crucial for long-term security. It's all about making sure systems are deployed in a secure, consistent state, initially and critically, staying that way throughout their life cycle. Two key tools here are baselines and images. When you provision a new system, install the OS, applications, the first step must be hardening it. Default installations are often insecure.
Hardening means.
Turning off unused services like File Transfer Protocol, FTP, if you don't need it. Closing unnecessary network ports. Removing default accounts or changing default passwords, basically reducing the attack surface. A baseline is the documented standard for that hardened configuration. It's a specific list of settings, what services should be running, what security policies applied, etc., for a particular type of system, like a web server or a standard user workstation.
And how do you apply that baseline efficiently to lots of machines?
That's where using images for baselining comes in. It's a very common practice. An admin sets up one master system perfectly according to the baseline. They harden it, configure everything just right.
It's a golden image.
Exactly. Then they capture an image, a snapshot, of that entire system. This image is then deployed to all the other identical machines. It ensures incredible consistency and saves a massive amount of time compared to configuring each machine manually. Plus, if a machine gets corrupted, you can quickly re-image it back to the known good state.
Can this be automated?
Oh, absolutely. Automation is key. Tools like Microsoft's Group Policy Objects, or GPOs, let admins define and enforce configuration settings across thousands of computers centrally. You can also use scripting tools like PowerShell. This is vital because attackers often try to change configurations like registry settings to gain persistence. Automated CM tools can detect and revert these unauthorized changes, keeping systems aligned with the secure baseline.
So CM keeps things consistent, but things do need to change legitimately sometimes. New software, configuration tweaks. How do you manage that without breaking things or opening security holes? That must be managed change.
Precisely. Change management is the formal process for controlling all changes to the IT environment. Its primary goal is to prevent unauthorized or poorly planned changes from causing outages or weakening security. Every change, big or small, needs to go through a structured process. Think about a simple scenario.
Okay.
A web server needs to talk to a database server through an internal firewall, let's call it Firewall 2. An admin needs to open a port on Firewall 2.
Yeah.
Without change management, they might just open the port, but maybe that port allows access to more than just the database, or maybe another admin, unaware of the change, closes the port later during a security sweep, breaking the application, or an automated tool reverts the change. Chaos ensues.
Right, the classic "it stopped working" calls flood the help desk.
Exactly. Good change management prevents this. It ensures changes are reviewed for security impact, tested, approved, scheduled appropriately, and documented. It directly supports the availability part of the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability. A lot of these concepts come from frameworks like the IT Infrastructure Library, or ITIL, pronounced ITIL. A typical change management process involves steps like 1. Request the change. Formal submission detailing what needs to change and why. 2. Review the change, usually by a committee, a change review board, CRB, or change advisory board, CAD. They assess risk, impact, and ensure a rollback plan exists. 3. Approve or reject. Formal decision is made and recorded. 4. Test the change, absolutely critical. Test it in a non-production environment first. 5. Schedule and implement. Do it during off-peak hours to minimize disruption. 6. Document the change. Update all configuration documentation. This is vital for troubleshooting later. Even emergency changes need to be documented after the fact. This rigorous process is often required for compliance standards like the Security Assurance Requirements, or SARS, and ISO Common Criteria. Related to this is versioning, especially in software. Keeping track of different versions, 1.0, 1.1, 2.0, helps manage updates and understand the history of changes. And all this feeds into configuration documentation, which needs to be kept up to date, showing the current state, who's responsible, and the history of changes. Invaluable during an incident.
Okay, so tight control over configuration and changes is essential. But what about threats that exploit flaws in the software itself? New vulnerabilities are found all the time. How do organizations deal with that constant stream? This must be patch and vulnerability management.
This is the relentless ongoing battle. Manage patches and reduce vulnerabilities is about continuously protecting against these emerging threats, bugs, and flaws. And it applies to everything: workstations, servers, network gear, routers, switches, firewalls, printers. And a huge area now is the Internet of Things, or IoT, smart TVs, cameras, industrial controls, even medical devices. These are often insecure and hard to patch, making them prime targets. Remember the Mirai malware?
Vaguely, it used IoT
Yeah,
devices.
it created huge botnets out of compromised cameras and routers to launch massive distributed denial of service, or DDoS, attacks against core internet infrastructure like domain name system, DNS, servers. For mobile devices, organizations often use mobile device management, or MDM, software to push patches and updates.
So what's the process for managing patches themselves?
Patch management is the process of evaluating, testing, and deploying these software updates or fixes. It generally follows these steps. 1. Evaluate patches. Vendors release patches. Admins figure out which ones apply to their systems and how critical they are. 2. Test patches. Crucial step. Test them on non-production systems first to make sure they don't break anything else. This can be complex for critical systems. 3. Approve the patches, usually part of the change management process. Get formal approval after testing. 4. Deploy the patches. Roll them out, often using automated tools. 5. Verify deployment. Check that the patches were actually installed correctly using scans or audits. Close the loop. There's a sort of rhythm to this. Many vendors like Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle release patches on the second Tuesday of the month, known as Patch Tuesday.
I've heard of that.
But then comes the scary part. Exploit Wednesday. Attackers immediately grab those patches, reverse engineer them to figure out exactly what vulnerability was fixed, and then quickly develop exploit code to attack systems that haven't been patched yet.
Wow, so the fix itself tells the bad guys where to hit.
Often, yes, it's a race. And sadly, many successful attacks exploit vulnerabilities for which patches have been available for weeks, months, or even years. Patching consistently and quickly is hard, but vital.
So patching is reactive, fixing known holes. What's the broader strategy? Vulnerability management.
Exactly. Vulnerability management is the more strategic, proactive process. It's about regularly identifying, evaluating, and prioritizing risks from vulnerabilities across the entire environment. The goal is to tackle the biggest risks first. It works hand in hand with patching. Key tools are routine vulnerability scans. These are automated tools that check systems for known weaknesses, missing patches, bad configurations, default passwords. Attackers use these same tools to find targets. Admins use them to find weaknesses first.
And the scans produce reports.
Yes, detailed reports listing found vulnerabilities, often ranked by severity, with recommendations for patching or configuration changes. Sometimes a patch isn't available, so the report might suggest workarounds. To talk about these vulnerabilities consistently, the industry uses the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposure System, or CVE. CVE. It's basically a dictionary, a standardized naming system for publicly known vulnerabilities. The IDRE Corporation, pronounced MITIR, maintains the CVE list, funded by DHS and CISA. Each vulnerability gets a unique CVE ID, like CVE 2020-06001, which was a flaw in a Windows crypto component. This common language makes it much easier for everyone, vendors, researchers, organizations, to track and manage vulnerabilities. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, wow, that was a lot to cover, from basic principles to cloud complexities and the constant patching cycle. Let's try to quickly recap the biggest takeaways from this deep dive into managing security operations.
Yeah, definitely a dense topic. So
Yeah.
we start with those foundational concepts. Need to know, limiting what you see, least privilege, limiting what you can do, absolutely core principles. Plus, segregation of duties, SOD, and things like job rotation and mandatory vacations for internal control and fraud prevention.
Right, the human and process elements.
Then we moved into personnel and agreements. Privileged account management, PAM, is critical, especially just-in-time access, and using it to help spot those sneaky advanced persistent threats, APTs. Service level agreements, SLAs, are key for holding vendors accountable, and we spent time on personnel safety and security duress systems, travel safety, and crucial security awareness training, including tackling that 2FA fatigue.
Protecting the people first. Got it.
For asset protection, we covered secure provisioning, the importance of asset inventories for both tangible hardware software and intangible IP, using tools like CMS, and detailed media management, securing tapes, USBs, mobile devices, and importantly, secure destruction following the media lifecycle, using methods like degaussing or shredding, keeping MTTF in mind for replacement.
Don't forget the cloud.
Can't forget the cloud.
Yeah.
We looked at cloud operations, the different service models, PaaS, IaaS, and that crucial shared responsibility model. Talked about scalability versus the automatic elasticity, and touched on serverless or FAFA's architecture, and the importance of encryption, especially customer-managed keys.
And finally, the ongoing management.
Right. Continuous management. The need for rigorous configuration management, CM, using baselines and images for consistency. Structured change management with its review boards, CRBCAB, to prevent chaos. And that relentless cycle of patch and vulnerability management, using vulnerability scans in the CVE database to stay ahead of threats as best we can.
That was an incredibly thorough tour. It really drives home that security isn't a one-time setup. It's a constant dynamic process of management, monitoring, and adaptation every single day.
Absolutely. It's that ongoing discipline and adherence to these practices that really builds resilience. It's about being proactive, understanding the whole system, not just reacting when something breaks or gets breached.
So if there's one final thought you could leave our listeners with today as they think about managing security ops in their own worlds.
Well, considering everything we've discussed, the processes, the automation, the cloud, it makes me wonder, in this world of increasing automation and managed services, how do we actively ensure that the human element, the critical thinking, the intuition, the ability to adapt to the truly unexpected remains central to our security operations? How do we avoid becoming too reliant on the automated controls and losing that vital human judgment?
That is a fantastic question to ponder. How do we keep the human insight sharp amidst all the technology? Excellent food for thought. Thank you so much for sharing all this expertise today. And thank you all for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning.